It's not about being rich. It's about being free to do whatever you want to do. Today, I wanted to actually share a story about a company that actually inspires me. And I'm not talking about Apple or any of the other similar companies. This is a company which is extremely small. It's an underdog in the big world of tech. It's creative and they take risks and they do weird little applications, utilities, games, and even a console. I'm talking about Panic. And those of you who know about Panic. But this is a company who actually makes me feel like that I can go and build something just because how they've done it. So let's go back to the 90s, and this is where Panic is this indie software company which comes out of nowhere. They're based out of Portland, Oregon, and they were founded by Cabo and Steven. There's no Silicon Valley mindset. There's none of the huge funding rounds. There's no thinking that they're going to go and change the world. It's just about, can we build amazing things which we actually want to use ourselves? That makes me wonder, is software art? That's something which they've talked about. That's something which I feel that is the case. And I think that's how they've also approached in building all of the things that they do. The first thing that I can find as to what essentially put them on the map was an MP3 player called Audion. They got a lot of followers for that application. They had custom skins, they had a mascot, they had weird sound effects, and it's not just another boring player. I come in from a world of Winamp in the 90s, and it essentially reminds me of what that world was like. It was so much fun. They almost got bought out by AOL also, but they decided to just walk away. For them, the freedom was so much more important to actually build things, break things, do things their own way than actually being bought out. That's basically what Panic has been, and that's Panic's philosophy in a nutshell. Going back to Audion for a second, Audion was being sold for $29. Apple comes around, they release iTunes. Apple tells Panic that there's no room for Audion, and they were right. iTunes was basically free, and that ended up killing all of that market share which Audion had. Now, how do you, as a small company, deal with a big giant company like Apple come in and destroy you? These guys actually just made Audion free. They wrote about this on their blog, released it for free, and that's how they actually won a lot of people. That's how I got to know about them when I was starting out. So that's so interesting how they actually changed a loss into a win for them because they ended up getting lifelong fans. But here's what matters. Audion essentially led to everyone learning about Panic, and it put them on the map. It essentially taught them how to deal with different kinds of pressures, take a punch, adapt, and then also move on. It essentially made them a big company without the big company issues, and they got to learn things very quickly. So what came next? Panic essentially decided to double down on utility and design and ended up building an FTP client. It was called Transit, I think, initially, and then they renamed it to Transmit. At the base of it, it is just an FTP client. How well designed can an FTP client be? But I think it's not just about how well designed. It's not just about dragging files from one place to another. It's also all the little details which matter in actually building it. There is a lot of personality which comes through from that app of the engineers and the designers behind it. They shine in how can they make something super friendly and have a little bit of fun, whether it's the styling, whether it's the error messages, whether it's the iconography, whatever it might be. It's a combination of all of those things put together, which not only gives the application a personality, but also highlights the amount of effort and the attention to detail every single engineer on their team has towards delivering a superior product. It's not just me who's saying it. Apple saw what they were doing, and they were awarded the Apple Design Award for Transmit. And this is not the only one that they'll get. So when iOS came out in 2007, 2008, That's when they decided to do iOS applications. And one of the more notable ones is called Prompt. I'm not sure if they still make it. I have it. But Prompt is essentially just a terminal SSH client for me to SSH into my servers. Terminals are incredibly boring, but Panic found a way to actually make that quirky as well, make that fun as well. And I mean, that was the only app that I had for getting into any of my servers from my phone or my iPad. I've had that for the longest time, and it's super technical, but it did feel good. And that's the point. How do you make your customers feel good? They were not done with the Mac. They ended up building this code editor called CODA. This was a combination of different tools and systems within one single application. That's basically what CODA was. CODA was a combination of a text editor, an FTP client, and a browser essentially combined into one so that you could have a single application to actually build your websites, see them, and deploy them. That's CODA in a nutshell. And they launched CODA in 2007. It was a take on modern Mac software, how Mac software should be. Code preview and upload, that actually led to another Apple Design Award. They became the premier software company which everyone knew about, and they were winning awards left, right, and center. And while anyone else would have actually continued to milk CODA as an application and make more money from its customers, they ended up doing another editor called Nova, which was completely new, built from the ground up, and essentially is the successor to what CODA used to be. Nova is their current text editor. Why do they do this? I think their mindset is more around, is it good enough? And if it's not, then they continue to iterate and continue to make it better. Let's also take a quick detour into what Panic was doing besides all of the work things, because they're not just about work. They also do some interesting and fun things. One of the things which they did was a utility called Desktastic, which allowed you to write on the Mac desktop, because why not? And they built this iPad application called the Status Board, which I know a lot of people miss and a lot of people actually need. It was a cool little system which allowed you to create a whole dashboard of plugging in various services into an iPad app and show you content, whether it's your Twitter feed or whether it's some other stat which you wanted to see. But it was a simple system which allowed you to do that. I think that they had an Apple TV app, but if I'm mistaken, I'm sorry about that. They did support the TV extension by plugging in an HDMI adapter to your iPad, and that would essentially extend that to the Apple TV. This was more for them to actually show off more of their quirkiness, their personality. They did partnerships with companies like Icon Factory for other applications as well, but those are the two which stood out to me the most. So what makes a Panic app feel like it's Panic? I think it's the energy. And their apps are always colorful, playful, sometimes odd. But at the end of it, they don't take themselves too seriously. I think that's the key. They know that this is just another app. It's not going to change the world. It's going to maybe help someone do one thing, and they want to make sure that that's the best experience they can deliver. It's not about being rich. It's about being free to do whatever you want to do. That's what Cable, the founder of Panic, also goes by. And I think that philosophy of Panic picking freedom over money, you can really feel in everything that they do, because they decided never to grow too big. They're still a small team. Everyone does a bunch of different things. Side projects are encouraged. They're a company in which the founders refuse to sell out and still continuously do what they like. Yeah, I think more companies who are founder led can actually use some of this energy, where it's not just about the money, it's about liking and enjoying what you do. So what's a company which does software on the Mac and on the iPhone decided to do with gaming and consoles? So in 2016, they decided to announce that they're doing a game called Firewatch. And they had no experience in gaming. They had friends who were doing games, but they themselves had never done it. Firewatch as a game was so brilliant. I played it on the PlayStation, and for me, that experience was surreal. It was a narrative adventure game surrounded with forest fire and me trying to control it all alone in the forest. And I loved it. Not just me, critics loved it. Everyone enjoyed it. And Panic proved to the world that they can actually bring their ideas and their mindset into indie gaming as well. They ended up doing the Untitled Goose game, wherein you play a goose and you cause chaos. And that's it. That's the whole game. You go nuts. The Untitled Goose game also won the Game of the Year award. Since winning the award, they've actually become champions of quirky little indie video games. They're doing a bunch of games themselves, but I think what they did next was pretty surprising for everyone. So they went from doing software to doing a pretty weird console, which is the Playdate. And they ended up building this in collaboration with another company. So let's talk about Playdate. When's the last time you actually saw a brand new game console that looked like this? Bright yellow, fits in the palm of your hands, is no bigger than post it notes, and essentially um, has this little black and white screen on the front, and yes, has a crank on the side which you can rotate to do various things. It's just because it's fun, and it's not just for nostalgia or novelty. The Panic team, with the help from Teenage Engineering, made this a real platform for creativity by both game designers and regular users. It's a super cool, tiny little console which is available, and I go back to this more often than I go back to my PlayStation Portal or the Analog Pocket. It's just so tiny and it's just so quirky that it essentially helps me with my creative mindset. It pushes my creativity and shows me what others are doing within this sort of constraint which Panic has set for everyone. So, what do people actually do with it? It's so weird. Obviously, there are a bunch of games out there. There are like 500, 600 games on Panic's catalog and itch.io, which are brilliant. It takes you back. There are some hardware quirks, but essentially, how can you actually use this tiny little thing, whether it's one-handed, two-handed? How do you make it work for your game? It's not a gimmick. It works. It's so funny. They have puzzle games where you control time using the crank. You go back in time by moving the crank backwards, go forward by moving the crank forward. There's a game where you control the surfboard using the crank by moving up and down. You do spins and various jumps. Um, some some crazy fans have actually ported Doom onto this, because why not? Everything that can run Doom should run Doom, and you can fire the chainsaw using the crank, which is super cool. But I think some people are also doing other weird things. They're running platformers. There is a port of Celeste Classic. I think if you're into challenging platformers, it somehow works very well in the black and white screen. And then there are other games which are real-time narrative-driven social simulations for you to navigate different scenarios. Who would have thought that this tiny little device can actually run such a huge catalog of games? It's not just the games that are out there. There are continuously new games that are being added to the catalog. The most interesting thing which Panic did was how they actually bundled a bunch of games with this. They essentially came out with season one of games as soon as you buy the console, and every week a new game is unlocked for you, and every week a new game and new experience is available. It's only one game that's available for you, So you get the time and the mindset to actually be ready for this. You play that for the entire week, and then next week another game's available, which was very different from what others do. They end up giving you all the games or no games at all, and then you need to go and search for. But these are well curated games, which Panic essentially handpicked for the console. What else do people do with it? It's actually quite versatile. People are using this as a music creation tool. There are different apps which are available on the Playdate, which you can use to essentially create music. There's an app called Pocket Proteus, which allows you to manipulate sound using the crank. There are pocket calculators. There's an ebook reader. There are different art tools which are available to essentially draw 1-bit pixel art on the Playdate itself. It has music apps, games, productivity tools. There's a planner which is on here. There's a calendar app, and you can do the same. You can actually build one of your own applications. They have this editor called the Playdate Pulp, which is web based. You can run it in a browser, or you can download the SDK and actually run everything on your computer, and it gives you a simulator as well. So you technically don't need to have a Playdate to actually publish anything onto their marketplace. You actually don't even need to publish things on their marketplace. You can self-distribute. You can either distribute it on itch.io and keep 100% of the money that's coming in. But yeah, I think it's more pro developer. They wanted to keep this as an open platform. So even though the console itself, the OS on this is not completely open, the SDK is fairly open, and people are experimenting with all kinds of things. A couple of days ago, I was looking at Reddit and I saw someone actually trying to build a home robot with this, which was super interesting. A desk robot with the Playdate. Funny little thing, but that shows you the power of this. So, in terms of the hardware, it has a tiny speaker, it has a crank, a D-pad which is quite clicky, A and B buttons, a button on top which also has a notification light. Nothing on this side. USB-C on the bottom with an audio jack and another microphone. So the star of the show is the screen, which actually does not have a backlight. It just works off of the ambient light which you have, and it has a bunch of different applications which are available for you. So I can go in, read the news, and it'll give me what's the latest. It has Wi-Fi, it has Bluetooth, um, and it can directly fetch various things. So it's a quite handy little device which you can carry around in your pocket. Yeah, the community is incredibly creative, and I think what Panic has done has allowed people to express their creativity in different forms and fashion. Some people, as I mentioned, use it as a one-handed device just because it's so tiny. It opens up usage for a lot of people from the accessibility standpoint. And others are just tinkering. They're trying to explore how much can they extend the possibilities with the USB port on this. There is no touchscreen, so you can also hold it in however you want. It's only these buttons that are the input mechanism on this. I mentioned that people on Reddit and Discord are doing some crazy things. I think it's not just about people are cataloging every little experience that they have with this console, and they're sharing the pixel art. They're making fun of the console. They're saying that is it the best console? Is it the worst console of all time? There's a whole subculture of memes around the Playdate, but it's all in good taste. It's all in good fun. You'll find discussions where people are trying to squeeze the maximum amount of juice from this little thing, and others were just trying to make music. Others were just trying to get started with programming, learning how to code in Lua, learning how to build a game, and this comes in as the perfect platform for people who are just starting out. I would say it's a case study in how do you have creative constraint, because having the buttons and the screen and the crank, it's like going back ages. It's going back into the retro game era, wherein this platform is available for anyone and everyone to actually build your own apps, build your own games. I was looking at some of their programming, and they had constants starting with a K, which goes back to their origins of Mac programming, because in the Mac, all of the constants in Objective-C started with a K, which is so funny to see. The hardware is still evolving. Panic makes sure that the firmware continues to stay updated. They launched the catalog, and which is essentially a storefront for games and apps. And they're always releasing new features and new accessories and other things. The price has gone up, of course, because everything is more expensive now, but people still want one. And it's not about whether this device is going to fulfill all of your gaming needs. It's not. It's not meant for that. It's more for you to challenge yourself and explore your creativity. More and more people and more fans are talking about this on all of the channels. It's not about what games can you play with this. It's about which game can you make with this. It's none of that AI-driven entertainment, but rather someone like you or me is actually building a game behind the scenes, and then you get to play with it with this weird little crank in this tiny little screen. It feels like it dropped out of an era which is long forgotten, but it takes you back. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the game you guys build with the Panic. And if you do build one, please drop it in the comments below. If you like what you see, please subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.